1, 2, 3, 4.
This is Marc Slutsky, drummer for Peter Murphy and Splender. He grew up out in Long Island, New York, where he first developed his love for the drums. He eventually made his way out to LA, where he attempted to play for everyone and anyone he could to make some headway in the music scene. Answering ads and showing up for open mics, Marc slowly started to make a living as a musician and meet people, which would lead him to the next gig. Marc's drumming style is confident and well-balanced. He can range from ultra-aggressive to minimalistic, and everywhere in between. He's also an expert music reader, which has been an asset to him in his more high-profile gigs. Marc has played for a laundry list of rock royalty, including Peter Murphy, David J. of Love and Rockets and Bauhaus, Kylie Minogue, Lou Gramm of Foreigner, Mickey Thomas of Jefferson Starship, Terry Nunn of Berlin, Tonic, and Billy Joel's daughter, Alexa Ray Joel. A highlight in Marc's career was 2019's Bauhaus reunion tour featuring David J. This year, everything's been put on hold, so I had time to catch up with Marc. Here he is.
Shaved my head for the first time in my life, maybe the second time.
Yeah, looks a little different from pictures.
Yeah, from the quarantine head shave, you know? I
Yeah.
needed to get a haircut, so I just shaved my head.
I had a beard going for a while through most of this, and I did like these little side stories on this channel called Glory Days, just talking about my rock and roll past, and full mustache and beard. And I did I videoed maybe 10 of them in a row, and then I shaved everything off just so I could put them in the bank and edit them. You know, I wouldn't be in a rush. Funny.
Yeah, I understand, man.
Yeah, I'm just clean cut. Yeah, like I said, I play for Duff and his band Loaded and a bunch of Seattle stuff. And I had an accident last year. And it's taken a while to work myself back. I should be dead, but I'm at about like 75, 80%.
What kind of accident did you have? Car accident or what exactly?
Yeah, I was coming home from a show. I live out in the mountains, in the Seattle mountains. And there was a huge snowstorm, and it was like the first show of this tour for Roger Fisher. He wanted to do all Heart classics, you know. If there's 10 Heart cover bands out in this area, and he's like, well, I wrote the stuff. I want to start my own thing. Mm-hmm. So I got brought on. Anyway, after the first show, just through the switchbacks, it was icy roads. It was probably going too fast, but I got ejected out of the car.
Wow. Were you driving by yourself? Or
by myself, and I didn't hurt anyone else, thankfully.
Wow.
Yeah. It was at 2 a.m, and a nurse driving by found me. She knew to keep my neck straight, which was amazing. I took her out to lunch a few weeks ago. I finally tracked her down to the police report. 5 broken ribs. My left ear was hanging off. I had to sew it back on. And
wow, I'm so sorry to hear this.
Yeah, but the spine thing, you know, I've played a lot of sports in my life. I even played linebacker in college, 65 pounds ago. But so I know what pain is. But the spine, trying to outsmart a spine injury has been really tricky. So I find myself in these self-pity, areas, and to get myself out of that, I was just like, well, why don't I contact all my drum heroes, and just on a whim, and just to put positive energy out there. And the first 4 or 5 heroes I tried, they all said, yeah, they want to contribute. And I was like, wow, I have something here, So I'm and it's been building. My last one was Chris of Talking Heads a few days ago. Everyone's been really cool and really positive and sharing their stories, because you've been playing as long as you have and as I have. There needs to be some physical maintenance that goes on to prolong your career, right? And I'm sure maybe you've had injuries, but I'm definite that you have some kind of routine to keep yourself healthy and strong while you're playing all these shows and stuff like that. And so and you have it's either heroes or people who have a drummer who have a sound, what I can consider a sound. And I think you definitely have a sound to your playing. So,
Thanks.
yeah, I threw out the invite and, I'm glad you accepted, and I'd love to, like, promote whatever you're doing too throughout this.
Absolutely. But I'm going to turn my not sorry to interrupt. I just want to turn my air conditioner off in here because it's creating a lot of noise, and I want to hear you a little clearer. One second.
Yeah, for sure, no problem.
No, to respond to what you said, yeah, I mean, your message was great, and when you reached out to me, and I get a lot of with today's world with social media, I get lots of emails and Facebook messages, and I can kind of sense when something feels right. I have a good intuition in general.
Yeah.
I trust it at least.
Yeah.
And immediately your message sparked my interest, and it seemed very genuine and sincere. And I don't do a lot of these, especially in today's world. It seems like a lot of guys are doing a lot of these types of interviews, and this is my first or second one I've done since in the last 5 months or so. And I've even been giving some drum lessons online. I've been using my iPad a lot more for communication because I've been quarantining at home. And it's really, it's astonishing how it's changed the way we live, and the fact that we're communicating this way the timing was perfect because I'm home. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and it's fun. I did it once, and I was like, I wasn't sure because I'm generally a little bit more of a introverted type of person in general, rather than the hey rock and roll party guy. That's not me at all, actually. So the first time I did it, I was like, that seems kind of weird to talk to someone, a stranger, over your iPad. But I enjoyed doing it, and I had a great sense for your what you were doing, and I had a sense that I knew that you were a drummer, and it seemed pretty sincere and coming from a good place. So I was happy to do it. So I'm so glad that this is working for you, doing these interviews.
Yeah, and let me be clear. Me doing anything that's going out to the public is really painful. Like, I'm supremely introverted. I don't like to do social media stuff. I don't like to talk in general. My wife has a huge issue with that, with communication. I just don't talk. So it's like I'm trying to combat vulnerability as part of this, in earlier interviews. As I go, I'm getting better at it, but I'm noticing things that like could be annoying as a viewer and stuff like that. So it's a challenge for me. It's like going to the gym or something, like talking to people. So, but I think we will, there is a common thread of, the drumming and music and songwriting and just the day-to-day stuff with touring and, dealing with pain and all that kind of stuff. So we will definitely have some common
I think our
ground.
connection's getting a little.
Yeah, sometimes it's choppy.
Go back two sentences, because it was chopping up to the last two sentences.
Oh, I was just saying, this is helping me with vulnerability, because I'm very shy, and to combat self-pity, and just try to put in a bad news world right now, just to put any kind of positivity out there for people who might be in the same spot or are trying to make a comeback, or just to get inspiration from their heroes. They're the people that inspire them as musicians. Hey, this is what I went through. You can do it, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, well, that sounds great. Well, ask away. I'm happy to talk to you about anything you may have in mind.
So you grew up in New York, is that right? Or you're just born there?
Yeah. No, I grew up in Long Island. That's where I was born and raised. And then I went to Manhattan School of Music when I was 17. It was literally right out of high school. And then I lived in New York City pretty much the whole time. All the bands I was in, my whole career, the ups and the downs, really took me through a lot of my early adult life, from college age until really, I toured a ton in those years. So it's not like I was away a lot, but my home was always New York. My family's from there. And then about in 2012, I moved to LA. I always liked it out here throughout the touring I've done. And a lot of New Yorkers were like, how could you like it in LA? A lot of New Yorkers have a certain attitude about it. But I really fell in love with it because, it's just to be a musician out here always seemed like a great thing. And it was something I knew I would do at some point. And in 2012, I did it. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm definitely a New Yorker. I was born and raised there, and I would say growing up was mostly on Long Island, and then from 17 into my early or mid 30s, I was living in New York City in various apartments and doing what New York drummers do, and that's pretty much, my background, before I
Yeah.
moved.
What was it? What was the record or the band that made you think, I think I want to do that instrument. I think I want to be in a band. Do you remember the
Oh,
moment?
that's so funny. Well, I didn't really want to be in a band. I mean, honestly, well, to go back, if you want to go back to my really early childhood, I come from a family of musicians. My mom is a piano player, classically trained, and she she's a music teacher at a school her whole life. She actually just retired not too long ago. So, and her father, my grandfather on my mother's side, was classically trained pianist as well, and he played in Carnegie Hall and in the back in the day, and so that side of my family was always very musical, and that was a big part of it. So my mother was always very very supportive and very encouraging to try and get me to play an instrument. And then, but as a kid, I was really into sports and stuff, and I kind of rejected it for a while. And then I think it was a Billy Joel concert that my mother took me to, and Liberty DeVito was playing. It's got to be, I might have been 12, 11. And I was just like, wow. And I looked up at my mom and I was like, I would love to play drums. It just seemed like so much fun. And so I guess, and being, when you're from Long Island, I don't know exactly if it's like this everywhere, but definitely when you're from Long Island, Billy Joel is kind of a big deal because he's from there, and he's kind of like the home team
I
for
think I've
people.
watched that concert. I remember watching that concert on videotape. I probably rented it like 20 times. The Billy Joel in Long
Which
Island.
concert
Billy
is
Joel
that?
live in Long Island. It was like 89, 90 or something like that way back in the day. And they
So
were in the round.
okay, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. That
yes.
was a good show. I just recently spoke with Liberty DeVito too. He's
That's
lined
funny.
up to
Yeah,
do one of these. Yeah.
I think you told me that. So yeah, that's interesting. That's what a coincidence. So yeah, I mean, that was the first like spark, and I think at the age I was at and the kind of kid I was, because I was really into, honestly, sports was my thing from going back to, my whole 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 was Little League and ice hockey and all these things. So when I watched Liberty DeVito play with the Meadowlands, I could, just by the way he was playing at that time, it had such an effect on me that it was really powerful. And I think my mother was ecstatic because she just wanted me to play an instrument.
Yeah.
She may have had something else in mind, maybe like piano or guitar or the clarinet, who knows. But the second I said I wanted to do it, I had drum lessons the next week. And then it kind of turned into something real serious, when I started studying with a teacher named Dave Stark, who really turned me on to guys like Dave Weckl, and I would say more jazz fusion drummers that were really popular. So that was really what I was into. So playing in bands and the kind of career I've had was not actually what was, it wasn't really necessarily what I was super aspiring to be a guy in a band that even played rock music, to be perfectly honest. So all through my late teens, I was listening to, the typical drummers that I was turned on to, that were playing more jazz-oriented music, whether it was Vinnie Colaiuta or the Chick Corea Electric Band or Michelle Camilo. I don't know if you're familiar with Michelle Camilo, but there's one record that Dave Weckl and bass player Anthony Jackson played on that I'd listened to so much, I think the tape broke. This is getting into like my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
So rock and roll, quote unquote, was not necessarily what drove my ambition at that time when I was first starting, or when I was kind of studying and I was practicing a lot and practicing things. Of course, I played in a high school band that played rock songs of the day, but that was not really what I was after. So I kind of fell into playing more rock band oriented stuff after college, and I was kind of ended up in a band that got a record deal, and that put me on a completely different trajectory than what I planned. But I look back at not just being into rock music necessarily in my training years. I think it really helped me become a better rock drummer and even a session drummer today, it helps me, you know, because I'm not, if I had only wanted to play in rock bands my whole life, going back to even my childhood, I don't think I would have learned more advanced things. So when I was playing rock music, of course, that has its challenges, and I respect a great rock drummer, of course, because that's what I do. But it was really easy to make that transition full time when I was in that band, a band called Splender.
Yeah, Splender.
Yeah,
it's
so
interesting.
That's kind of the early story that I have.
How weird is when life takes a turn. You know, like after football, and I went to college in LA. I grew up in Orange County and went to college in LA to be an audio engineer. I didn't even go to my graduation. I didn't even want to go to college, but
Really?
the mom said you have to get a degree. So, okay, I'll go. I'm going to do audio engineering. I moved to Seattle. I didn't know anyone. I just answered about 6 or 7 ads in the paper. Mm-hmm. One of these ads I answered, all, you know, drummer wanted, whatever. One of them was pretty damn good. And then we got signed to Warner like 6 months later. And now I'm not an audio engineer anymore. Now I'm like on the road on a Warner Brothers band. And it's like,
oh, really? You were breaking up earlier in those few sentences. You said you were an audio engineer and then you ended up in this band. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I went to college after football. I dropped a bunch of weight. I went to college to be an audio engineer. I did love music. I did write songs, but I didn't consider myself a drummer. I was kind of like a jack of all trades. And then, but I answered an ad and we opened up for like, as a 3-piece without a bass player, we opened up for Alanis Morissette and Face to Face and Betty Severe and Belly and Catherine Wheel. And it's like, okay, well, there's something here.
That's great.
And then we got signed to Warner by the president of Reprise, Howie Klein. And now I'm not an audio engineer anymore. Now I'm drumming and I'm touring around. It's like, okay, yeah, like this was my dream anyway. And it's not so far off.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. You know, I think, especially in music, but in life, but I would say especially in music, because it's such an unpredictable business, you really don't know what your next opportunity will be. And it's very hard to predict or plan, you know, like exactly. I mean, you know, I don't know if it works out exactly how we all plan when you start. You go down different paths and I guess it's part of the fun of it, you know. As long as you're prepared and open-minded to the different opportunities that come your way, that's kind of the key, I believe.
I really try to press that. I have a small school here called Loud House at my house. I was one of the music directors at one of the biggest corporate music school out there, and then I left for differences of opinion. And I started my own thing, and I have students 6 years old to 17, and I have this thing called the drummer's tool belt, where just, you know, rudimentary things, shuffle versus straight, flam stuff, Bo Diddley beat, things like that. But I also say to the ones who want to take it really seriously, I talk to them about networking. I talk to them about making connections and being at the right place at the right time, you know, being prepared. It's okay to practice. You know, you can go to school, get private instruction, but so much of it is the networking and having a good attitude. And I think I'm sure you have many experiences like that in your career.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely, to be perfectly honest, which I'll be honest with you here, the networking side of the business, because like I said earlier, was generally more introverted, you know, especially when it came to music. I just practiced a lot. I was probably one of those kids who just practiced a lot and really thought that's where it's at, you know. And I did learn as I got a little older that there's a whole business out there, and there's the networking, and with social media, it's even more so. And it has been, it's something that didn't totally come natural to me. It took time for me to get better at that side of it. But because I guess I'm more of a music person first, a playing person first.
I'm not, just to interrupt you, I'm not even talking about, as a shy person, going door to door, say, hey, look at me, I'm awesome. I'm just saying you are prepared, you do have chops, and when you get in a room with people who are connected to other people, they see that, and they talk behind closed doors saying, hey, there's this guy. You don't even necessarily talk. I see what you're saying. And they contact you, you know, and just person to person, band to band, you collect these people who know who you are, and opportunities come up, you know.
Mm. Yes, definitely. I agree with that.
Well, like I said, the drummer's tool belt I mentioned, the 16th notes, triplets, paradiddles, flams, shuffle versus straight, bow diddley, stuff like that. What would you insert into that as like a very young, serious drummer's drumming tool belt? What would you say? Maybe just the 2/4 beat, the basic rock beat. What else do you think is primary for a drummer to carry into a room anywhere they go
Well,
as a musical language?
Say that one more time. It was breaking up a bit. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So concerning what I call the drummer's tool belt, just basic rudiments and basic beats, flams and bow diddley beat and shuffle versus straight and right hand lead and things like this. What would you say, from your perspective, you would add to that as a very young person who's serious about drums to carry into any room that they should know?
Oh, okay. Well, that's you have a lot of stuff in there that I think is important.
Yeah.
I think I'll add to that, which I think is really important. I really feel strongly about that. About this, to not all that stuff you said is, of course, learning how to read, having good time, knowing how to get a good sound out of your instrument, your touch. But I want to add what I would add to that is things outside of the drummer, quote unquote, realm, like listening to a ton of music, getting out of the drummer head, listening, learning how to play another instrument, perhaps. Like I play a little guitar, not just necessarily being stuck practicing drums and listening to the drums only. I think that that I think is a big difference between guys that work a lot and the kinds of drummers I like. They're not just drummers, some of them are producers and they're drummers, or they know music. It's not just like, I feel like if you for example, there's drummers that I know of that will practice the Moeller technique on a drum pad for 8 hours a day. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But I think that's fine, but to make a clear distinction that's just an exercise, and it really isn't, has nothing to do with making music and playing music with other people, and it has nothing to do with coming up with drum parts for songs and relating to singers and relating to songwriters, and just getting out, staying inside the drummer head, but also having an understanding that there's a big picture of music, that the drums is just a part of the big picture. And I think it's important to be more than just into the drums, have a little bit of understanding of chords, melody, arrangements. And that helps you come up with that great drum fill that goes with the chorus, that might be simple, but really tasty. And maybe knowing, it just makes you overall more musical musician, as opposed to just a drummer. I hope that answers your question, but I think
For sure. Like listening, for sure. Dynamics, for sure. Just because you know how to do something fancy there doesn't mean you have to fill that space. Yeah. And I think a really good example, I just got done talking to Mike of the Goo Goo Dolls. So many hits. He's just rock solid, and I know he went to, he studied at Miami and he studied at North Texas State, and he's been schooled, but he's playing his part. Yeah. And you can hear in there sneaky stuff where he can, if he wants to, he can shred, but he's playing his part. He's playing to the song, and the song's successful. And all his fills are of the big songs. They're air drumming fills, like what's coming.
Exactly, and that's just being musical and not, because I grew up playing with a lot of technique and studied all the greats, and I still do, and I still practice on a drum pad, and I still have I have drum books and things that are in the realm of drumming because it's my passion. But I fully understand that is not that's not music. You know what I'm saying? That's just drumming. It's just technique, which is a means to express your ideas. So you want to have technique, of course, but I think that would be the main thing. And I have some students too that I teach them cool licks or all the things that you may have mentioned. I have a few students that I'll go through that stuff with, but I make it pretty clear, like, you know, learn this beat, but also learn how it fits into a song, you know, whether if I'm going to teach a beginner a basic drum beat,
Yeah.
and then they learn how to play it, I'll be like, okay, now go home and put on Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, which has just the basic boom tip drum beat that I may have just taught them.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, now get an understanding of how this feels in a song or in music, or, you know, and make the connection between the academic stuff in the drumistic stuff out of books or things you may write down, but make a really clear connection to how it connects to music. Because I think that's really ultimately, in my opinion, the point of it all. You know, it's to play music with people in whatever style it may be, you know.
It's funny you brought up Billie Jean, because I just had a lesson right before you. He's probably 8 years old, and we were doing that basic 2/4 beat, but I have these two fills I'm trying to drill into people. There's Naughty Boy and there's Grasshopper. It's 2/8 to a quarter, quarter to 2/8. And I was like, we're going to play Billie Jean. I want you to throw in Naughty Boy and Grasshopper, but don't make the song too crowded, you know. You know, just don't make it about the drums, but when you feel right, throw it in there, you know, and make sure you don't.
Yes.
They're starting to understand that, you know, very, very, very popular used fills. You know, I give a lot of the stuff nicknames. Just they like that stuff.
Like bucket of fish or something like that.
Yeah. Bucket of fish. So I'm not gonna. Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's awesome that you make the connection, no matter what age a student is or what level someone is, teaching them something and then connecting it to something musical, as opposed to leaving it alone as just a drummer thing. And then you're just kind of like, you don't really, that connection should be made. And I think that's great that you do that.
Top secret trick when you're starting to lose interest from your younger people: Minecraft songs. They'll click right back. Minecraft songs. When you start to lose interest from your younger folks, just find the same song you're doing, but do it the Minecraft version. They'll refocus.
Yeah, that's good, man.
I'm just gonna go down, just learning more about you. I'm gonna go down your Wikipedia stuff here a little bit. Just I'll bullet point it. Maybe just give me one memory or one experience from these artists. You can tell me how you were involved, or just like one little funny story or something like that. Lou Gramm, what do you remember about this?
Lou Gramm. I think I worked with him 2, maybe 3 times. For the last number of years, I've been doing these orchestra gigs. I played with him in a very, I guess, a much more sophisticated situation than your average. I still do these. It's one of my favorite things to do. There's a guy I do gigs for who puts on shows with singers like Lou Gramm, or other people too. Mickey Thomas from Jefferson Starship did a number of them. And basically we're the full orchestra, and the band is an LA-based band. So we get all the charts. You get like a stack of music this thick of the hits that you know, but you can't just memorize it because you're about to play them with a full 70-piece orchestra and a conductor. And they're arranged for orchestra. They're not, you know, so they're not the same versions that you might chart out from the album. I mean, it helps if you know the song, because it will most likely be the same tempo, and, you know, the chorus will be similar, but you have 70 people and a conductor with you, and you're reading these charts, and you really only get one or 2 rehearsals in LA with the core band, not the orchestra. You know, let's say the show was in Cleveland, or I think the one with Lou Gramm was in Niagara Falls. So the 5 or 6 piece band will do one or 2 rehearsals in LA, and then the very next day we'll fly to Niagara Falls. In this case, we've done a ton of them, but I think the one with Lou Gramm I'm remembering most was in Niagara Falls. And then the orchestra that's there is the orchestra that's associated with that city. So it's like the Niagara Falls Symphony. And I guess every city, like Cleveland has an orchestra, Montreal has an orchestra, you know. So we get there, and then you just do one run through with the orchestra, and that's the end of it. And then the it's all on the same day. So you have to really so that those gigs were super exciting and super. Those gigs are always high pressure, and I actually really loved it. So that I worked with him under those circumstances. It was him, and we did a bunch of Foreigner songs and hits that he was a part of. And there wasn't too much interaction, you know. I can't give you a juicy story. I guess I'm remembering him. The first time I saw him was when he was coming out to do sound check with us, and that, you know, and we were about to do our full run through of the show with the band and the orchestra. Maybe we had a little meeting with the conductor for 15 minutes before. And Lou came out. I think he had an assistant, and he came to each guy in the band, because we're set up kind of in the front, and the orchestra and the conductor's like behind us. So when I'm counting off the songs, I'm also counting off the conductor, who's up on a podium over my left shoulder. And then there's 70 people, you know, string players and so on, violinists, cellos, because normally these orchestras play classical music, but these kinds of shows are like symphonic rock shows. So Lou Gramm would come out, and, you know, and it was exciting because we were always, you know, those songs were iconic, and it was pretty amazing. I couldn't wait to see him. And he kind of came out very mellow, and he shook every guy in the band's hand, and, you know, it was very, very chill. And then we just kind of ran the show down once, and then he gets whisked away. You know, I didn't have the same dressing room as him or anything like that. He gets whisked away, and then the next time I see him is like maybe 5 minutes before the show, and I think he might have said, "Hey, you know, have a great show, guys, and you got to go out there and make no mistakes." You know, we're playing like Cold as Ice and all these songs, but you really have to, as a drummer, those gigs. I'll say this: playing with after all the years of experience I've had, playing with a full orchestra and dealing with a conductor, playing Foreigner songs or songs that might seem relatively simple. It's one of the most exciting and challenging high pressure things I've ever done, because you're in these beautiful, like, I'm going to say the Beacon Theater. If you live in New York, you know what the Beacon Theater is. You're in these beautiful theaters, double-decker theaters. You know, it's sold out, and people are there to see Lou Gramm and or some
much more specific acoustics than some kind of outdoor summer festival.
Yeah, but you have to play. A lot of times they'll say, you know, could you play a little quieter because you do an orchestra and these. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so that was my experience with Lou Gramm, and
talk about two alpha
pretty
singer
heavy.
Mickey Thomas and Lou Gramm, like these two huge belters, you know.
Yeah.
Wow. And so Mickey Thomas was involved in that situation.
Mickey Thomas, not at that show. I maybe did a different show under the same circumstances. But we did Jefferson Starship songs, and, you know, I remember when we worked with him, we did all Jefferson Starship songs. Like, we ran the era. Like, we did some songs from the 70s, you know, into the 80s. We built this city on rock and roll, which is kind of getting into my era of when I was growing up.
That would sound amazing with an orchestra.
Yeah, and we're all on in-ears too.
Yeah.
So Mickey Thomas, my God, I remember of all these shows I've done the most with him. And I remember having him in my in-ears, because you get a good enough, you have time to do a good sound check where the whole band is on in-ears, so we can get a really good mix of whatever we want. So I had this great mix, and I remember the first time I did We Built This City, because I played along to that song growing up a lot. It was just on the radio a lot where I'm from, so that's what I was doing. Like, we all did as kids, we played to the radio, and that song was on the radio all the time, and I used to be really excited to play that when it would come on the radio. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to play this song. I probably was playing it wrong. It's like 13 years old. But when it was kind of surreal, because we did that exact song with him, and he's in his 60s now. I don't know exactly his age, but he's definitely maybe in his mid-60s, and he sounds exactly the same at the record. And every show I've done with him, he doesn't have to warm up. He could be maybe tired because he just got off a plane, and it just comes so easy for him. He sounds just like the record live without any warm-ups and it sounded like I was playing to the record again, but it was him in front of me, you know, and he was cool, you know. So yeah, that's my experience with him and Lou Gramm.
I'm a huge Raider fan, so he's attached to the Bay Area.
I'm sorry.
So I said I'm a huge Raider fan, and he's attached to the Bay Area. So I see him doing the Star Spangled Banner once or twice a year during football season, and he sounds amazing.
Is that right? Yeah. He's just a great singer. I mean, we had some background singers. We've become friends. We've done a number of these shows already together. I think from some of these background singers that are part of the core band in these situations. This girl named Christine, she lives in Vegas, and she's just a killer singer. And she would just comment all the time about how incredible Mickey Thomas is as a pure singer, like just an incredible talent. And he was really, it was really pretty special to play with him, to work with him. You know, I really liked. I'm a fan of that band, and he was just such a nice guy. Like I actually spent some time with him. Like I remember we got picked up at our hotel. This is Mickey Thomas I'm talking about. Like the day after the show, it's usually just a one-off, these types of shows. So we'll do the show. Sometimes there'll be two in a row. And then like we're all staying at the same hotel, and then we get our cars to take us to the airport. And this one time I had a car with him because we were both, I guess our flights were at similar times. And so we were just like, we had a long car ride. It was like him and I and maybe one or two other guys that were in the band. And I really got to get to know him as a person, you know, and I was just so impressed with how talented he was, but how humble and just such a cool, nice guy. Like there was no ego at all with him, you know. It's really cool.
Hey, thank you for sharing that. I was a big fan as well. And I grew up teaching myself the drums during the new wave era. So Berlin was definitely in my wheelhouse. When learning the drums off of vinyl and memorizing skips on the vinyl and stuff like that first record. So how did that come about? What was your involvement with Terry?
With Terry?
With Terry Nunn, yeah.
It's interesting. You're hitting on the same shows. Terry Nunn, I worked with once, and she was on a show with 3 other singers in the same capacity with the orchestra. She was also singing. I don't know who the other 3 singers were. I think it was like an 80s feature, you know, a symphonic rock show that featured the 80s, and she was one of the singers. And we did like 4 Berlin songs, 4 songs from another band, and so on. And she did the Berlin songs. So she really just did 4 songs, and that was cool. I didn't really hang out with her too much. I don't have too much.
Yeah.
Actually, she lives in Los Angeles. This is the only thing different happened with her. She was at the rehearsal, the band rehearsal, which is normally just the band. Because she's local, she was able to come to the rehearsal. So I remember her coming to the rehearsal and being like, "This is so exciting. We're going to do this song with an orchestra." She was excited to hear her songs. What was the one, the big hit from the Tom Cruise movie? We did that one.
Take My Breath Away.
Yeah, we did Take My Breath Away. And it's a really beautiful song. And she was just very emotional and excited to be able to rehearse with the band, but she was kind of like part of the band for the day. We were just rehearsing in LA. We were both, you know, because we went with the orchestra rehearsal was going to be the next day in whatever city it was.
Yeah.
And she was just like, my memory of her was just, she was so like a kid in the candy store. She was just so excited to like, she's been playing these songs for however many years, and now she's like going to finally get to hear these songs with an orchestra.
Yeah.
So that was my memory with her. And she was really great too. I really enjoyed working with all these singers. I loved all. They were all great.
I can't believe she could have been Princess Leia.
Oh, is that right?
She was in the auditions. Carrie Fisher beat her out. You can find it on YouTube.
Are you serious? I didn't even know that. That's funny.
You can check it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you for too long, but I just have a couple more things. So we were talking about, you know, you can practice your ass off, and you can go to school in private instruction. You can go to university, and but having a good attitude.
Yeah.
Meeting people. And bands talk to bands and getting in rooms. So if you wouldn't mind, can you tell me how the Peter Murphy connection happened?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
I was just saying, I was talking about schooling, chops, but having a good attitude and also being able to network, whether it be from you or other people talking about you. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got hooked up with Peter?
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I keep asking you to repeat yourself. I want to make sure.
That's okay. I'll edit all this stuff out.
Oh, okay. Wow, with Peter Murphy, that was an interesting situation. I guess that goes back to when I first moved to LA, 2012. And I was just going out all the time. I guess you can call it networking. But really I was just going out and it was kind of new in town at the time. Maybe I still am. It hasn't been that long, but and I was just going out a lot, going to jam sessions even, and just, I guess, trying to meet people and just, to be completely honest, just to see if I even wanted to stay here. It was just kind of like, I still had my apartment in Brooklyn that I'd been living in for 7 or 8 years prior. I didn't get rid of it. And I was in this phase of just kind of just checking it out. And it was exciting, and I had lots of energy. And I was just like, let's go, let's, where's the jam session? If I don't have a gig, and I had some gigs and some studio sessions here and there from some people I knew, but if I had a free night, I was like, where's the jam session? I didn't care with who, where. And then I guess, and I met a guy, his name's Happen and Harry. I don't know if you know, but he hosts a lot of jam sessions, and he was always called me during this period of 2012, 2013. He always, I'd always like go and play a few songs. It could have been AC/DC songs. He always hosted these jam sessions at various clubs around LA. And if I was available, I would just go, just to basically, I guess you could say, meet people, play, whatever. And he would maybe say, hey, can you come and sit in and play these 2 or 3 songs? It could have been an AC/DC song or a Dio song even. I played with him once. And we just kind of, I wouldn't say we were best friends, but we were like acquaintances. And I never expected anything to come of that relationship, really. And many, many years went by. Now I could fast forward to 2018. Many years went by, and probably, I get a random text message from him. So this is the point of the story is someone that I met in 2012, 2013, came around years later, remembered me from that period, I guess, when I was new and he saw me around. And he wrote me a random text message. He said, Peter Murphy is looking for a drummer because he said, I know this because the last drummer I'm friends with, and he's not doing the gig anymore. And he's like, I think you'd be perfect for it. Check it out. So that, you can imagine, it's a weird text message to get, it was very random from a person that, who I'm friends with, but it still felt random. It wasn't like we were in touch regularly. I may not have saw him for a year. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting how LA works that way. Things, you could meet someone and make an impression, and then 5 years later get a text message like that for your next opportunity that you never would have expected.
Just be ready.
Yeah, you just have to be ready, I guess. So I was like, okay, in my normal fashion, I was like, I have nothing to lose. I'm also kind of live my life like I don't have I always go for it, I'll write someone that email. If they don't write back, whatever, I'm not worried about my ego or
rejection.
I don't really care, So yeah. I basically did what I normally do. I'm like, all right, well, it takes 5 minutes. I will just write Peter Murphy's management. I knew his management company was called Rocky Road. And that's not really his management company. It's kind of his booking agency / management company. And I just went to the website and I found the contact at the website. And I saw Peter Murphy's name was one of the artists on the website for this management company. And I just wrote a random email. I said, hey, I'm not expecting to hear back, to be perfectly honest. And I just said, hey, I heard that Peter Murphy's looking for a drummer, possibly, and I would be really interested. Here's some video links, random stuff about me, my website, my Wikipedia, whatever, anything, maybe what I've told you, Not expecting to hear back, but luckily for me, within 5 minutes, they wrote, the woman, her name is Jody, she wrote me back and she said, I looked at your stuff. This is literally 5 minutes later.
5 minutes.
It was 5 minutes. I was shocked. I thought I wouldn't hear back at all. And I was prepared to just be like, whatever, of course I'm not going to hear back, But 5 minutes later, my computer dings and it's a return email from this person. And she said, I just checked out your stuff and I think you might be perfect for Peter, because I had worked with, at that point, I had worked with some of the people we had talked about already in this interview. So maybe perhaps she said she saw that I worked with people in Peter's generation, perhaps. I'm not sure exactly what resonated with her, but she said, I think you'd be perfect. I'm going to have his MD call you. And this is really how it happened. You know, it wasn't really complicated. I wish I could give you a more complicated rabbit hole story, but
I
it's
love
really,
it. I love this story.
so,
It's usually a lot more complicated.
yeah, so that was it. And then I guess a week later, Emilio called me. He lives in New Jersey, and he's Peter's MD. He plays great violin. He's his bass player. And he called me, and we talked for like an hour and a half, which was another serendipitous thing, I guess, because he's from New York too. We weren't in the same circles, but we had a lot to talk about because he was living in New Jersey, but his life and was on the scene in New York too. We just hadn't crossed paths, so we were able to talk about people we both maybe knew. Turns out we did know a lot of people in common, and we had a general similar energy, if you will, you know, because we're from the same place. You know, when you're talking to someone that grew up in the same area that you kind of grew up in or came up in or lived in, you kind of have a lot. There's a lot of common ground there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a similar kind of person as I was. I could tell immediately. So so that was a good thing that happened. We talked for like an hour and a half. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, listen, I'll be honest with you. I think I saw your videos. I saw your pictures, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm really rooting for you to get this gig, but Peter's looking at a number of different drummers. I'm going to send him your stuff. And ultimately it's Peter's decision. Peter lives in Istanbul, Turkey. So then again, I was like, great. It was, you know, I was happy to have that conversation with Emilio, and I was again, went back to that same frame of mind, like, hey, I still may not get this gig, and it'd be great if I did, but you know, he was being honest with me. He told me that Peter's looking at a lot of different guys, and then I guess, I don't know, a couple of weeks went by. I don't know. I maybe followed up. I don't remember exactly. And then I got an email from Peter, I think, saying like, you know, welcome to the band, you know, whatever. And Emilio said, Peter picked you. It all happened quickly. After those few weeks went by, after I spoke with Emilio, everything kind of happened quickly. And I guess I never inquired about who the other drummers were or how many other drummers there were. Because at that point, it didn't really matter. But I'm guessing that Emilio sent Peter all my information. And Peter probably just went on his intuition. And now it's years later, I've been playing in his band, and it's been amazing. I mean, the first gig we did was, I don't know how much longer it was after that, but it was in Guadalajara, Mexico, with David J. playing bass. It was like a Bauhaus show.
So how long between when Peter sent you the email and the first show was it?
You know, I was just thinking about that because I want to tell you that. And it's so much has happened. We've literally toured the world over a year and a half. I can't remember that exact time frame. Maybe a couple. I'm going to take a guess and say a few months.
Yeah.
But Peter, it wasn't like, you know, there was a lot of music to learn because I had to learn all of his material and all the Bauhaus stuff. Because not that gig, a lot was required to play with Peter at that time because he was planning on doing a world tour with Bauhaus with David J., the bass player. So it was the Bauhaus stuff. And he was also planning on doing a residency concerts that weren't Bauhaus. That was his entire catalog from all of his solo albums. And we were going to play a different album each night. So in those few months, I'm going to take a guess. Like I said, it might have been a few months. In those few months, I had a lot of music to learn. I literally just sat up and learned every song, every one of the solo albums, and then every Bauhaus song that I thought we might play. And it's not the kind of gig where we rehearse a lot either. It's kind of like pressure. That first gig was really massive pressure. It was a festival in Guadalajara called the Roxy Festival. It was in like April of 2018. And we were doing Bauhaus stuff, never really played with Peter or his band ever. And I flew into Guadalajara, went to my hotel. The next day was supposed to be the first rehearsal. Like no one was there except me and the guitar player, something crazy. And then the next day was the only rehearsal that could possibly happen before the show because the actual show was the following day. So I'm like, all right, great. We're probably just going to get one rehearsal now because Peter wasn't at the first rehearsal. And then he came to the second rehearsal. And this Roxy Festival is like a few, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know. It was a sea
Yeah.
of people. You
Yeah.
know, there was Incubus went on after us. It was a really big show, and basically, I don't think we even ran the set. I think we ran a few songs, and Peter was like, "This sounds great. I'm out of here."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god! Like we're about to play, and I haven't even rehearsed the set really." So that was and I knew if that gig didn't go good, that because he didn't know me that well yet, he just kind of knew me from what he maybe saw of me from what Emilio sent him. So I knew this gig really needs to go well, and we're not really rehearsing, but the gig ended up being magical, and I guess it comes down to the old saying, like, when preparation and opportunity meet is when good things happen. And I think for me, I get through these situations, even the orchestra gigs I was telling you about. It really saves me that I'm a good reader, and I'm a good chart writer, and I could kind of, with little or no rehearsal, I've been through enough of those kinds of situations where my threshold has reached a point where I could perform on a high level still, but not really have the luxury of rehearsal, or not really have the luxury of even knowing the song, but I could find a way to sneak a chart on my floor tom to get through it, even if it's a complicated song, and at least get through it and keep the time good and keep the feel good. And that's an important, for me, I don't want to say for everybody's career, but for my career, I would say that has been the situation I've been in every cool, life-changing gig I've ever had. It was always a pressure cooker, and I'm always like, all right, here we go again. But the beauty of it is if it does go well, like with Peter, you end up playing lots of shows, and then you get the luxury of being comfortable, and then you could really express yourself freely. And that's kind of what started to happen when we did that world tour. It was, eventually we became a band, and it got really comfortable, and it became like one of the greatest musical experiences of my life. Are you there?
Oh, there you go. Man, that
sorry.
takes so much courage. Like you just think about the opportunity at the time, but
Yeah,
not everyone can do that.
it's definitely, because a lot of artists don't like to rehearse, and I get it. Like Peter's been, I'm putting myself in this particular case in Peter's situation, and Peter's, he's been playing these, and David J, they've been playing these songs for 40 years. The band's been around or more, so they're just like, we don't want to run Marta Stigmata 100 times in rehearsal, like when they did when they were 17, when they wrote it or whatever. They just want to that's just such a chore for them. But for me, it's like my first time playing it ever with them. And it is an actual hard song to play. That's why I mentioned that one in particular. But I have to be like, okay, this is the situation. I'm not going to be you have to kind of sink or swim, of course not complain and be like, oh, we got to rehearse. Like, no one wants to hear that. You have to kind of be like, okay, I'm going to take this on fully. And I don't know, eventually kind of the switch goes off and you just say, all right, showtime. It's time to like really bring it and not be afraid and not let the nerves get the best of you.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good place to reach as a musician. If you're a session musician or a hired musician type, it's a good place to reach mentally, because it puts you in a position where you do it a few times and it gets more comfortable when you're in that position, and more comfortable. And it's just, it's good practice to get used to playing uncomfortable. I think I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And that's something that kind of happened to me. It wasn't something I was like, oh, I'm going to practice being uncomfortable. You can't really practice that. I think over the 20 years of playing professionally, I just have been in those situations. So I was able to handle it,
Yeah. I remember, touring around the world or whatever, like the fact of thinking about playing in a stadium, like with Duff, and we're playing Guns N' Roses songs. It's like, before we get on a plane, I'm like, I had some other like rock star friends, and I was writing them like, how do you play in front of that many people? How do you play in a soccer stadium that's sold out? Like, and they're giving me feedback and stuff. And it's, it's just repetition. Like by the third stadium gig where you're seeing the person on the very last row jump up to some Guns N' Roses, you're the one who's making them do that. somewhere around the third or fourth one, you get used to it. It's like, it's okay. You're just
Yeah.
play your thing, and you're just all on a
Yeah.
stage together. It's the band. Don't think about the other stuff. And as a parallel, not on the same level, but with the no rehearsal thing, I was hired.
Hold on 1 second, because could you hold on a second? My battery's getting low. I don't want
Yeah.
Let me just plug this in. Okay.
I was just going to say, as a parallel, not on the same level, but that band Third Eye Blind was passing through a few years ago, and just in the middle of their tour, the original members, I was a friend with a guitar player, and they asked me to come in just on Northwest dates, and then they're going to go back up and hook up with some other drummer. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And it's, by the way, we're not going to rehearse at all. You just have to play.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
We're going to do the first 2 records in their entirety, and we don't want to rehearse. So, I drive down to Portland. I meet them on stage. We do, like you said, we do like the first verse and the first chorus, and they go, okay, we're good until showtime. It's like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
Like 25, 26 songs or whatever.
Yeah, that's I think, I don't know if it's a drummer thing. Maybe the nature of being a professional drummer, you find yourself in those situations because drummers are always interchangeable in situations, and people are interchanging drummers, and they can still put on their show, and I guess when someone's been playing these songs, like Stephen Jenkins in your case, he doesn't want to run, Semi-Charmed Life 50 times for this drummer, for this one or two, for a show. He just doesn't want to, and it's almost like, for the drummer, it's a lot of pressure. I think drummers might find themselves, but I've heard stories of guys, guitar players, that were in those situations too. So maybe it's not just drummers, but generally, when you're a musician that gets hired and you're a freelance musician, not in one band, if you make your living doing that, you kind of got to be prepared to be uncomfortable at times. And I think I really do think it's a skill. I don't think it's something that I'm sure when I have a memory of playing my first Battle of the Bands in high school, 9th grade. We played Wipeout, a Whitesnake song, and I just was so nervous. I played terrible. I think my mom has it on video maybe or something. And I remember learning then, even though I was a very beginner player at that point, but I did remember learning a lesson from that. Now that I think about it, that nerves and being uncomfortable as a drummer, especially because it's such a physical instrument, and you have so much responsibility as a drummer when you're playing with a band. Just keeping great time is a big responsibility, let alone all the other things, and listening and dynamics and making sure you can hear the singer and making sure everybody's comfortable and blah, blah, blah. To do that under pressure when you have nerves happening, like I did in that high school Battle of the Bands, I think it's a lot. And I think it's a skill that can be developed if you allow yourself to take on the challenge and fall on your face, be depressed for a week about it. Maybe you'll get fired a couple of times, hopefully not, but then you get back up and you do it again and you do it again. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I'm getting better at dealing with this. And, that's my opinion about it.
One step back to Guadalajara. So usually bands, legacy bands, where there's main characters. Maybe there's been some personnel changes over the years, but these legacy bands, they usually have a drill sergeant or a musical director connected to the main focus. Not to say that you were off your game or you weren't reading correctly or whatever was going on in Guadalajara, but was Emilio maybe that, or was there someone there to help you with visual cues just in case stuff started a little astray? Here we go. Here's the second chorus. Usually with people.
Well, actually, Emilio wasn't on that show. Sorry if I wasn't clear. That show was a Bauhaus show. So that with the Peter Murphy gig that I've experienced over the last 2 years, there was 2 things happening kind of at the same time. There was Peter Murphy's solo stuff, and then there was Bauhaus stuff. When it was Bauhaus stuff, it wasn't Emilio on bass. It was David J on bass.
Okay. When
it was a Peter Murphy solo show, then it wasn't about Bauhaus at all. It was Peter's band, which includes Emilio, where Emilio would be playing bass. So to get back to your question, David J was playing bass on that show, and there wasn't many cues because it was, maybe at the end of Okay, here's a little cue that if you're interested, I hope I'm not
Yeah.
boring you here.
Nope.
At the end of Bela Lugosi is Dead, that bossa nova beat just goes and goes and goes. And I was playing it, and and David J would look at me and be like, okay, you could stop the bossa nova beat whenever you feel it. I kind of was it's like you have to be it goes back to what I was saying before, in dealing with that feeling, playing confidently as a drummer, but also being sensitive and aware of everyone else's needs at the same time. It's a balance. So this is an example, like playing that, really laying down that groove in that song, but at the same time, I don't want to end too soon if maybe someone's being very subservient, I guess you could say, or aware of what is going on and sensitive. So in that case, David J, gave me the head nod, like, okay, you could end it now, So like there would have been a cue there, or on that show, the guitar player was a good friend of mine named John Andrews. It was amazing. When we would do Passion and Lovers, it has a guitar. Do you know these songs, by the way, when I say these titles?
Yeah, I know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, there's a song called Passion and Lovers. And it's funny, I remember this pretty clearly, even though it was a long time ago. I wasn't, there's a point in that song where I wasn't exactly sure when to come in. Oh, no, it wasn't that. It was God in an Alcove is the name of the song, where he does a guitar intro, and then the drums have to kind of set up the tempo immediately. And I had asked him before the show, I'm like, before the drums come in, can you just click your heels twice? So I know that that's the tempo you're feeling and that we can land on the one together. So that would have been an example of a cue that I kind of had to work out with him before the show, because I knew that would be, that's another thing. I knew that when I was going over the show, I was thinking like that can be a train wreck. So let me figure out how to possibly solve that with the guitar player before the show. So we have a cue that he can control, so we'll hit the downbeat together. I had to kind of foreshadow the problem that could occur.
Yeah.
So that was a cue, but I kind of planned that with him to make it so we would be together. But to be honest, on that Guadalajara show, there wasn't too many cues. There's not really a musical director when I'm playing the Bauhaus stuff, I guess, because David and Peter are the original members, so I'm just constantly looking at them to make sure that they're comfortable and happy with what's happening, because they're the guys,
Yeah.
And I just kind of do my best to watch people's body language. There's another thing I do when I'm in these situations, like, if a singer is singing an intro and there's no drums per se, a lot of times the singer will tap his foot or do some sort of body movement in quarter notes, whether it's tapping their foot or bobbing their head. And that, I look at that as like, okay, that's how they're feeling the time. Like that's a metronome right there that I could follow. So when I come in, that's where they're feeling the song. So even if there was no musical director, but I kind of try to find little ways to make it go smooth without having someone telling me, even if it means like, oh, I'm going to look at Peter's hand and get kind of a tempo of where he's feeling, even though he's not trying to cue me, I can kind of see where he's feeling the time before I'll actually come in. Like
smart.
Little things like that. So you don't come in faster than he's at. Because if you don't do that, you might just come in like, okay, this is where I come in. But you may come in maybe not where he's feeling it. And he can, and that's when they'll look back and be like, it's too fast or too slow. To avoid that, I just kind of try to figure out who I could look at on the stage that can give me a little bit of a clue. Now, I want to say this. When we're like 5 shows into a tour, this doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
Since you asked about Guadalajara, which was my very first show, there was a hyper alert happening. Being hyper alert is happening when I'm in those situations, which is doing the stuff that I'm describing to you. So yeah, there was no musical director on that show, but there are things that I could clue into. I think that show is on. You could find some clips of that show on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I think you type in Peter Murphy Guadalajara Roxy Festival.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen him live. I was a huge fan of Holy Smoke.
Oh yeah.
So do you guys still do Low Room? I think that's my favorite.
Yeah.
I
It's one
will.
of, that's one of my favorite songs to play. I'm so
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that. Yeah,
Love
we
it.
play that a ton, and I particularly love playing that.
Yeah. I've ripped that guitar, the intro guitar riff. I've ripped that one off and put it in some original stuff years back.
Yeah,
Just disguise. I love those chord changes.
yeah.
Back to the theme of this whole thing. Have you ever dealt with any kind of injury that you'd had to deal
Oh,
with on the road or in the studio, or also what would be you're prepping for a tour? So what's your physical maintenance plan
okay.
as a drummer? Yeah.
Okay, well, to answer the first part of the question,
Yeah.
I, I'm I'm lucky in that I have no wrist problems. I've never dealt with carpal tunnel or the common
Drummer stuff.
hand, wrist,
Yeah.
shoulder problems that drummers have. I have I've dealt with a chronic, and it's not it kind of comes and goes. It's something called sesamoiditis, and it's
Hmm.
basically on the ball of my foot, on my bass drum foot. I had to go to a foot doctor for it over the years to figure out what it was because I was having so much pain in my bass drum foot. And the doctor, I went to a sports doctor, and he said lots of pitchers get it, ballerinas get it. You can look it up. It's called sesamoiditis, and basically it's like there's a tendon that runs through the arch of your foot to your big toe, and that's your flexor tendon. And that, from playing the kick drum for however many years I've been playing, that has a tendency to get inflamed if it's like it happens and then sometimes it doesn't happen. So
Hmm.
that was the first major issue I ever had that I still deal with, but it's like kind of comes and goes. It's not something like I could play a show where I'm playing really hard and really intense and not feel it, and then maybe I'll have a week where it's like really hurting, and I could even be limping a little bit because I can't put pressure on the ball of my foot. So I've had right foot issues with something called sesamoiditis.
Hmm.
And then the only other issue is I get my lower back gets a little bit stiff. Nothing major, but I definitely have a lower back thing. I think it's probably because I tend to sit a little on the lower side. And I've tried to mess with my seat heights because that's the obvious thing to try out if you're having back problems. But
Posture stuff.
I just can't sit. I like sitting with my legs parallel to the ground where I'm making somewhat of a 90-degree angle with my knee. And that's where it's at. If I sit too high, I feel like I'm not balanced the way I want to be.
Yep.
And it's just how it is. So it's something I just deal with. It's not like, earth shattering where it's like, it's just, like I said, some days are better than others. I definitely think it has to do with posture and my seat height. And that's really it, those two things.
Cool.
And
I've talked to some people like Max
preparation
Weinberg.
for touring.
Yeah. Go for it.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish what you said.
I was just going to say, who was I talking to? Chris from Talking Heads. He was talking about Max Weinberg, who's had so many surgeries, and Larry Mullen from U2, who has had so many surgeries. It's really lucky that you've. It's just the foot.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I'm really lucky, and I don't quite. I wish I could say why. I don't know. I just because I played in a lot of situations. I would say really heavy hitting, where you're really hitting hard, and I've never ever had to ice my wrist. I've seen guys icing their whole hand or wrist.
Buckets.
Never. I've never. Thank God, I've never. Even if played many shows where I was not warming up, even when I was younger, and never had any nerve problems or tendon problems or tendonitis or carpal tunnel in my wrist whatsoever. Since the day I started playing, it's really just the foot and my lower back, and that's very manageable. It's not something that I don't need surgery. I'm not at that point, even close to that point. It's just wear and tear.
Yeah.
And I remember I have some memories of when I was playing a lot in New York City, like not touring, but like doing 3 rehearsals in a day and then doing a gig at Arlene's Grocery. I toured up for years, like, carrying my cymbals on subways and cymbals and snare to like various gigs. And I really said yes to everything for a good 10-year period in New York. And I had this problem with my foot at that time. And and in New York, the lifestyle is you walk around a lot. You don't get in your car. So even if there were times I remember finishing a rehearsal on like 30th Street and limping to the subway because I couldn't get in my car. I had to walk a few blocks just to get to the subway and then walk another 5 blocks to get home when I got to my house subway stop, my apartment subway stop. And I remember thinking, fuck, my footing on my right foot because it was just so blown up. So the lifestyle of New York, the walking around aspect, I think made it worse because after the gigs were done, I was walking with my cymbal bag and my snare drum. That happened for years. And I think I just really abused it from the lifestyle of walking around with heavy equipment and playing so much and playing in situations where I had to play loud too. So I was really hitting the kick drum hard. And I just kind of chalk it up to, that's an occupational hazard and thankfully it's not stopping me from continuing. And, but that's really it, those are the two things.
Do you do constant stretching or yoga or anything like that?
I stretch, I do stretch. I don't have like this, I'm not like heavy into yoga. It's something I actually want to get into. And a lot of my colleagues that I'm friends with are like, Mark, you got to do it, and I've seen some chiropractors over the years and they're like, yoga is what you're going to do. And it's something I plan on getting into at some point, but I do have, basic stretches I do almost every day, whether I'm playing or getting ready for a tour or not. I just feel like it's important. It's it takes me 20 minutes a day. So that's my routine. And then I'm kind of, when my foot isn't agitated, I love to run and jog. I just love putting the headphones on, listening to whatever kind of music I'm into at that moment.
Yeah.
Or even if I'm learning songs, I remember I would go out for long jogs when I was holing up learning all the Peter Murphy albums, like Holy Smoke and all the Cascade. I would just go on a run in like Topanga Canyon or wherever out here in LA. And just blast Holy Smoke and use that as a slight as a kind of rehearsal / run and break a sweat. And that's been my exercise of choice, I would say, most of my adult life, which doesn't help my foot issue because of the pounding on the foot. But I'm kind of addicted to that kind of exercise. I really love, that's the kind of exercise I enjoy the most, like running, breaking a sweat, and, really just kind of getting in my own world. And kind of music is tied to it because I feel like when I'm running and I'm listening to music in my headphones, it's just kind of, I feel like I get a bit of a rush from that type of exercise. Where if I was to do the same thing on an elliptical machine, I feel I get kind of bored.
It's nothing like running. I ran every day before the accident. I can't run yet. I hope I can, but I can walk and I can do things, but I can't run. I really miss it because there was never, I try to swim, but there's an endorphin thing that goes on when you're running. You can get really creative. You can get a bunch of emotions out. You can go to a trance, I really miss that part of it.
That's exactly, yeah. So that's it really. As far as, hotels, I love when they have a treadmill, I'll use it. But I'm not really like hardcore, I'm not a vegetarian. I don't do yoga. I'm not a hardcore yoga guy. I'm not, I do some I'm pretty basic. I'll be honest, should be better about, and I plan on it as I get older, be better about everything, diet, finding more vigilant ways to exercise, not running. So it's a little bit easier on my body. I know I'm coming up on that time where I have to start thinking about what I should do to get the same exercise that I need, but not run. And, maybe not have that slice of pizza as often as I do. But that's kind of that. Yeah. I'm not, that's kind of my, I have to be honest. I'd love to tell you I'm this hardcore.
Oh no.
Yoga.
I've got a lot of bad habits that's probably holding my healing back, but, everyone has
it's what's that?
Oh no, there's some choppiness stuff there.
Oh, okay. Good. I have a good friend, one of my best friends, Jeff Thal. He's really healthy, super clean with food, and we talk about it all the time. And he's always trying to steer me in the right direction. So eventually, I'll get there, But I will say I do think it's important to exercise and burn calories on a regular basis, however you do it, and it's just stay fit. I'm definitely more
try to stay healthy to prolong your career. You're in a good groove right now. So everything's been put on hold. Everything's been canceled. But do you want to do any shout outs for any endorsements you have or point people towards you as far as like lessons or anything like that?
Oh, well, I'm teaching now. I have a number of students, especially with what's going on. I've been doing a lot of teaching just like this on Zoom or on FaceTime. I have 4 or 5 students that are new, and I'm enjoying that a lot. I'm actually in the control room of my studio right now, but through the door in the other room is where my kit is. I have 2 kits set up, and I've been doing these Zoom online lessons with students, and I've just been loving it. So that's something I'm really excited about doing, which kind of came up. I've always enjoyed teaching and talking about music. Obviously, we're talking about it. I love this kind of stuff. And I love talking with other drummers, young drummers, college-age drummers, and doing lessons in that fashion. And it's been great to do that. And then I have my studio where I do a lot of drum tracking for people, where I'll, the online remote drum tracking thing, which I that's also in my studio. A kit that's mic'd and sounds great and all. That's another thing I do. And especially, and then there's the touring, but touring's not happening now. So most of my focus is on teaching, and anyone that would want to take a lesson, I'd be very open to teaching. I have the time, and I'm really loving doing it. And of course, tracking drums for people's records stuff. I've actually been busier doing that than ever before because all my musician friends are home. So they're like, Mark, I got a track. I'm making this record now. Can you do it? And I have like a whole a list of songs that I have to finish.
Nice.
I'm trying to get to. So quarantine has been, it's having my studio. I'm very lucky to have a studio in my backyard, which is soundproofed and separate from the house because I have a 3-year-old daughter in the house. And, I'm lucky that I can come back here in my own little world and get drum lessons, and I have all my drum kits. It's like my little hideaway that I just love, and I love giving lessons here and doing drum tracks. So that's really it. And as far as endorsements go, I don't know. I endorse Pork Pie drums and Peisty cymbals and Innovative Percussion drumsticks. What else? Roland. I don't want to leave anybody else.
Do you have an in-ear?
Remo drum heads is really the only choice. I'm with Remo as well.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, today you've gone well above and beyond what I was expecting, so I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop recording, but I'll ask you a quick little question right after this.
Oh, hold on a second.
Sorry. No, Molly, Daddy's on the phone. Come on. We'll be back later.
Maybe she can say hi. Yeah. Could you edit her out of the video if she says hello?
Come on in. Come on in.
Okay. This is my daughter, Molly.
Hey,
Molly, say hi.
Name's on your screen, Molly. I'm gonna stop recording, but I'm gonna ask you a quick question right after this.
Come on,
Okay. Molly, could you let me finish here?